Hi everyone, welcome to the Ravit Show. Super excited to be here today, and today we are excited to welcome Ben Dooley to the show. Ben is a distinguished leader in business strategy and technology innovation with a track record of guiding startups to success and enhancing operational efficiencies of established companies. He's currently the head of productized solutions at Intercepts, where he focuses on helping companies transform themselves with artificial intelligence. I've met Ben before, and I've obviously loved all the work that he has always done in this space. With nearly 30 years of experience, he has been at the forefront of driving digital transformation and fostering growth in the tech industry. He has been recognized as a leader in the data and analytics and has actually published on many outlets, including Harvard Data Science Review. Ben's expertise spans across strategic planning, leadership, development, and cutting edge technology trends. Thrilled to have him on the show, and also can't wait to hear all the great insights that Ben is going to share today. So, without any further ado, let's bring Ben up here. Ben, welcome to the Ravit Show. Such a pleasure to have you here, and definitely super excited to chat about AI. Obviously, also talk little about the challenges that companies are facing, and a lot more. Just for our audience, would you like to tell where are you joining from and what's happening in your world of data and AI?
Hey, Ravit, it's really great to be on the show. I do think we met some time ago. It's been a couple of years now. I think we were in the UK at Gartner, I believe.
True, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm actually joining here from sunny San Diego, California. So it's we're in the throes of summer, and just having a great time here in San Diego.
That's awesome. First of all, welcome to the Robert Show again, and I'm excited because today I'm going to ask you maybe some difficult questions, or maybe some easy questions. Just kidding, Ben. Obviously, I want to learn more about AI. I've been listening to a lot of enterprise leaders, and they've been telling me that okay, now it's 2024 is the year of implementation. We've been implementing, we've been seeing experiments. There have been challenges, a lot of things, right? But one thing that I've been kind of also hearing is about we are at the peak at the hype of AI. So, what are your thoughts? Are we at peak hype cycle for AI, or how does it look at? How do you look at it?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's an interesting question, Ravit, because I like to use data clearly to form opinions, right?
Yeah.
When you think about, there are a couple of pieces of data for me that indicate that we are probably in a hype cycle for AI. And one thing I look at is, recently the Federal Reserve released their findings, and which indicated that we're only on track for a 5%, year on year increase in software spend, right? Which is well below trend.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were starting to see significant investment in AI, I would expect to see that number much higher, right? We're also starting, especially here in the US, we're starting to see more market turbulence where valuations are starting to come under question, especially around AI or AI companies.
Right.
Couple that sort of with, the fact that last quarter, half of US investment, venture capital investment went into AI startups. That's over $28 billion just in one quarter. So that drives a lot of marketing. That drives a lot of hype. It drives a lot of sales activity. And if you sort of couple that with a lot of FOMO that exists within organizations, I think we have the right recipe for a mature hype cycle here.
Those are fantastic insights, and I love how you keep a very good track of numbers. Obviously, being into data and analytics, it kind of also helps us to understand things better. But those are good points that you've kind of made. One more thing that I've been hearing, as I said, obviously with a lot of enterprise is wanting to learn more and more about AI. At the same time, the biggest problem that they've been facing is about adopting AI. So, because I know you work closely with a lot of customers, a lot of enterprises out there, I'm kind of curious to hear your thoughts about what are some of the biggest challenges you see with companies adopting AI. Any thoughts there, Ben?
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. Um, we coming out of this experimentation method or mode, right? We spent the last several years building tech stacks and really maturing and broadening capabilities, educating workforces. My assessment right now is that folks are still sort of stuck in that experimentation cycle. A lot of the clients that we engage still seem to be have hodgepodge implementations, if you will, very siloed, tend to be, in my opinion, sort of dabbling around the edges of the potential of what AI can offer in truly transforming the organization. And so, I think what we're learning as an industry, and back to sort of the hype cycle point, AI is a different beast and different than what we've perhaps seen in recent memory. And if you think about every time we build an AI model, every time we do something related to AI, it's essentially a mini development project. Right. And it's a development project that requires a level of collaboration, co-ideation, and co-development between the business and IT that we maybe haven't seen in the past or in recent memory. And so I think it's taking some time for organizations to really adapt to that new paradigm.
Okay, those are really good insights, Ben. And I agree to, obviously, AI being a different sort of beast when it comes to, obviously, also comparing it with the IT projects. But just a curious question on since we are on this topic, obviously, I also want to learn a little about what's your take on Gen AI? What is the current state? Where do you see companies getting the most value out of it? What's the investment looking like? Curious to learn a little more.
Also an interesting topic. What we see across our customers is AI really, Gen AI specifically, solves a challenge of creativity, right? So things like generating ad copy, things like document summarization. We're not seeing it necessarily deployed in applications that require high levels of precision, right? Not yet. Just because of the nature of the algorithm, it's a little bit of a challenge. I think, my personal prognostication on this is Gen AI outside of creative applications is potentially more of a revolution in the human-machine interface versus AI. Right? So think about what Gen AI really allows us to do. It allows us to now start to interact with machines in the language that we're used to versus clicking and typing and doing things like this, right? So I think we'll start to see that, Gen AI start to drive more of that machine interface.
Yep. Okay. Ben, also curious to know, I know, we'll definitely get more and more into the AI space. But if I ask you, if you had one piece of wisdom for, the companies out there who are just setting out on their AI journey, what would it look like? I know it could depend from company to company, and industry to industry, but still kind of curious to learn about your thoughts.
My take on this and sort of prognosticating a little bit is leading companies 10 years from now will be AI driven, right? We've talked about being data driven in the past. What does it mean to be AI driven? Being AI driven means not only looking at analytics, but also using AI and augmented intelligence to not just drive who you market to or how you operate, but also what products you build, who you include in your supply chain, how you sort of manage those corporate functions, right? So AI for successful companies and leading organizations 5 years from now will drive many decisions that it doesn't drive today. Okay. And a recent article in The Economist, if you look at valuations of, especially around big tech, and you do some discount valuation and discount some cash flows and look at earnings forecasts, right? The real payoff, if you trust financial markets, the real payoff for AI, that exponential curve that we've all really been looking for, happens around 2030 to 2032. And so there's still some time. There's still some time, but the way I also think about this is the tech sector is really fraught or has a history of consolidation, right? Big winners, lots of losers, right? And I think as AI starts to play more of a role within industries outside of tech, we're going to start to see more behavior along those lines. So I think it's imperative that companies start looking now, today, to figure out how they can become more AI driven. And so if I had the one piece of advice, start with a strategy, right? Even if that strategy is built on experimentation, and I would recommend building a strategy around experimentation. But if you continue down the path of siloed implementations and the things that go along with those, the implications that come along with those deployment mechanisms, you'll start to miss out on some of the compounded growth that you get from having a centralized strategy. So I'd say start with a strategy would be one of the big key pieces that I would recommend for folks.
Okay, these are fantastic insights, Ben, that you've kind of shared with us. Love what you said. Obviously, with the consolidation, it always happens where there are a few big winners and then there are a lot of losers. I agree with that because, and you have to be smart in this type of market. So starting with the strategy definitely makes a lot of sense. So now I'm gonna obviously switch gears a little bit towards the challenges, and I know obviously you've kind of put something for our audience together. So would love to obviously bring that up for our audience and get more in depth about the challenges and different things that you have for our audience. So over to you, Ben.
Yeah, that's great, and thanks, Ravit. And what I'll do at the end of this is I'll actually pull up one of the platforms that we've developed to kind of show, maybe even demonstrate a little bit live how we can put some frameworks in place to help folks in this.
I would love that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, awesome. So here's I just want to present a little bit of data that we found, both our own internal data and the clients that we speak with. And this is also validated externally. When we talk to data science teams, one of the frustrations that they deal with is 1 in 5 of the models that they develop actually make it to production. Right? That's a lot of money that organizations are sort of wasting on building models that don't necessarily add value to the organization. So this is one challenge that we see. And it's sort of tying that back to why we're not seeing the significant investment uptake that we would expect to see at this point. This is one of those challenges, right? On the other side of the equation, when you talk to the business teams, only about 80% of those, 80% of those folks will state that they're not seeing the expected value that they would expect from AI. So you can see there's sort of this gap. Data science teams are building, but the business teams just really aren't seeing the value that they would expect to see. And so we've, in our conversations with clients, there's really 5 questions and 5 sets of challenges that come to play that sort of define this gap. The first one is, understanding if you're solving the right problem. Am I building an AI? Am I deploying an AI that's going to solve a tangible problem that can be operationalized within my organization? That's sort of the first challenge that we see folks with, kind of grapple with, rather. The second one is really understanding your data, right? This is the challenge I think everyone deals with. There's a lot of tools and tech stacks and things coming online to get our data in better order. But the second challenge is, once we have our data in order, how do I tell if my data actually has signals, right, that can affect a certain KPI that I might be optimizing for, right? So that's the second challenge. The third challenge, which is one of the most important challenges here, is how do I gain trust in those predictions? So when AI is telling me to do something, how do I trust that it's telling me to do the right thing? Okay, so that's the third one. Now the fourth one we see is, how do I actually enable my teams to act on those recommendations? So, we can put recommendations in front of folks, but if they don't integrate with existing workflows, or we're asking, folks to totally change their workflows to implement new tools and things, now we have friction within the user workflow. People sidestep, and which really kind of throws a monkey wrench into how an AI is set up, right? So we want to change or implement as little change as possible in the end user workflow.
Yep.
And then finally, how do I stop these from being one-off projects, right? How do I make these things, this process, repeatable and scalable within the organization, right? So those are sort of the five areas that we've sort of identified. And since we're going to bring up the tool here, I'll show you a little bit about how we kind of help clients answer these questions quickly and early before they spend too much money going down the process.
Yeah, I would love to see that for sure.
Good. And then I just want to bring up one more thing here. So the whole goal of AI is to transform a business workflow, right? I'm doing something, I'm making decisions in a certain way today. And ultimately, I want to use AI to make better decisions faster, right? And so that's a transformation of a workflow. So traditionally, what we see as we engage clients, especially folks that are early on in their AI engagement, they spend a lot of time on the prediction piece, right? How can I build a model? How can I build the best model without really kind of understanding the downstream implications of implementing that model within their organization, which is what ultimately creates value. So what you'll see, and I'm going to bring this tool up here in a second, in DiscoverYai, is a focus on how we enable teams to take action, and then also the workflow, the processes, the governance, the responsibility, making sure models are bias free and or reduce risk. Reduce risk. Make sure AI models also comply with regulatory requirements and other requirements along those lines. So there's a lot of things that sort of go around and need to be built on top of just building the baseline prediction, especially as we see things like the new regulations coming out in the EU. We're starting to see more here in the US. So that governance framework also becomes a very critical portion of the deployment process. And then finally, how do we actually make our AI more intelligent over time? And so we think about doing things like closed loop analytics, where I want to look at the recommendations that the AI made, the actions that were taken against those recommendations, and determine what works and what's not, so I can make better recommendations going forward. So that's sort of the way we think about it from a high level. And these are sort of some of the nitty-gritty things that we deal with when we talk about closing that gap. These are sort of some of the more detailed aspects that we help clients with.
Love it. I think that's one good plan to have when it comes to obviously having first understand the challenges that these customers, these enterprise leaders face day in day out, and then obviously putting it together and filling those gaps for them. That's a good one.
Yeah, we get really good feedback on this process as well, and especially folks that are early, that have an opportunity to really start with a strategy, as well as folks that might be further down the line, right? They may have a data science team, they may have model libraries, they may have models in production, but this really sort of helps them corral that information, if you will, and make sure that they're driving forward and focusing on the right things that will ultimately create value.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that, Ben.
Yeah, so Ravit, now if you don't mind, we're going to geek out a little bit.
Yes.
So I think it might be good just to sort of see it in action, and let folks see how this kind of works behind the screen here, behind the scenes rather.
See the magic. Let's see.
Yeah.
Here we go. and I can make it much more larger for the audience and hide our faces. So now the folks can see this in full screen.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So, so the first thing I'll do, Ravit, is, so you can see the screen, yeah? Everything's up
Yes.
and live here. Great. So I'll just orient folks around kind of what we're showing here. So this is a platform from InfoSeps called DiscoverYai. And you can think about this as an AI managed service. Okay. So essentially what we're trying to do with this is to help clients understand very quickly some of those gap points that we talked about around data readiness, ensuring that we're focusing on the right problems. How do we make this repeatable and scalable? How do we make it explainable? So just to orient folks here very quickly around what they're seeing here, and then we'll dive into some of the use cases, or at least one of the use cases I think we'll have time for here in some more detail. But imagine, I want you to imagine for a moment that you're a VP of marketing, or maybe you're a chief data officer, or a person within an organization that is responsible or is thinking about how to best deploy AI to generate value. So the first thing that we talked about was sort of making this repeatable and scalable and understanding sort of, if you will, the use case pipeline. So if you're that chief data officer, your business teams are coming to you probably daily asking for potential, or presenting you with potential AI opportunities. Either they might be in marketing or sales or operations or whatever that might be. Okay. So you can think about this. The first thing you'll see here, if as that executive, is a use case pipeline that sort of shows you all the use cases that you're working on as an organization. So this allows you sort of an at a glance view to help you understand what's in pipeline. You'll see here also, what stage these opportunities are within pipeline. And also some things that I'll point out as we get to a little more detail is, what is the business value that we think we can create with these particular use cases? So think about this as your AI dashboard. If you can think about it as an AI center of excellence, if you will, think about this as being sort of the cockpit that you would operate from. Now let's jump in. We're going to pick one of these here. Let's go into the customer cross sell. I think this is one that most folks might be familiar with. Just a 30-second view on that. Imagine you have a client base that you want to sell another product to, right? So you're trying to sell one product into an existing client base. Okay. So the first thing you're going to see here, and I want to jump into a little bit of detail here. We talked about how we make this scalable and repeatable, right? To be repeatable and scalable, it means that we need to be able to identify use cases that are worth focusing on very quickly, right? And if they're not going to generate value, or they're not technically feasible, then we want to understand that early. And we want to move on to cases that might generate more value, that are more technically and business feasible for implementation. So the first thing we do, once you have your data loaded into DiscoverYai, as you create these use cases, the first thing we're able to do is tell you very quickly whether you have the data to affect the KPI that you want to impact. So this is a key step, right? Because you can get pretty far down the path of planning and doing all these things, only to realize that you don't have the data to build the AI that you thought you were capable of building. That's first step. Second step, and these sort of exist in parallel here, is kind of understanding the business value potential of the use case. Yes. So what does this mean, right? What does business value mean? So a couple of things. You think about AI really does two things. It makes better predictions than humans can, or it makes more predictions faster as good as a human can, right? So you think about this two sides of the equation, right? There's an optimization side, and there's a potential growth side, if you will, from making better predictions. So this is a process and a structure that we take our clients through to help understand what does a positive prediction mean. If you're able to move on a positive prediction, what does that mean? And what is the cost of a negative prediction? And what does that look like to operationalize that? You know, one example, we're on a cross-sell use case here, right? So let's use this as an example. For, you know, one thing we might do to influence a cross-sell might be to call a customer, right? Call an existing customer and pitch them on the phone. So we want to think about what's the cost of that call, you know, and can we actually operationalize that? So think about doing that sort of operationalization qualification up front, if you will, to kind of understand the feasibility and the business value creation. So what's interesting here is we see clients sort of doing one of these, sometimes the other of these, but very seldom do we see folks doing this very early in the process, like we promote in doing in DiscoverYai. So this gets a lot of interest, and you know, certainly helps clients focus on the right use cases that can actually be implemented.
And I think, Ben, this is something which is a game changer for at least those who are kind of, you know, obviously looking at a tool from a perspective where they can obviously optimize the cost and get the best value out of it. And at the same time, obviously think about, you know, the increase in the revenue. And they have everything, you know, built just on one tool. So, and like you mentioned just before this about data readiness as well, that's like the one thing that I always kind of chat with a lot of enterprise leaders, and they're like, one thing we're concerned, and that should be the first and foremost for us, is like data readiness, and we are concerned about that. If we have that in place, we can go out to obviously business value or thinking about the other opportunities, and you're kind of solving that problem firsthand. So thankful getting much more in detail into it and how it kind of looks like, even the dashboarding, you know, obviously these table and the numbers. So yeah, it's very insightful.
Yeah, and this is key here, right? Because we talked in the opening segment about folks wanting to get out of experimentation mode. How do you get out of experimentation mode, right? You increase the velocity at which you can experiment, right? And so and those experiments will get more accurate over time once you learn what your data is capable of, what you're able to operationalize, right? So you'll have more successful experiments as you go over time.
Exactly.
There's just one more thing here I want to show, Ravit, and I think it's an important thing for folks, because we get a lot of really positive feedback on the ability to help organizations guide through deploying responsible AI models into production. So if we think about responsible AI, there's a number of different factors. Best practices. We think about the ability to manage security concerns around data injection, all kinds of different things that we need to really think about. Think about even highly regulated industries where certain actions that you take must meet a certain regulatory requirement, right? Must not favor certain demographics over others. So the question then becomes, how as a leader can, if I'm a VP of marketing or a VP of operations or a VP of commercial banking at a bank, how can I ensure, as a business leader, how can I get insight into whether my AI models that I'm about to deploy into production are ready for deployment? Right. So think about this. Yeah, it is, and it's a challenge. I think that a lot of organizations are trying to manage manually right now. But this also gets in the loop because it's very hard to sort of quantify the risk associated with these AI models. So what we've done here is put together this responsible AI framework, and it's this is partly based on work we do with clients, also some research out of IBM and some other organizations to
Nice.
really identify the big pillars that are required to meet these to deploy these AI frameworks or AI models rather responsibly. So we look at things like human centricity. We think about things like security. We think about things like human in the loop. If my AI starts to make predictions that are outside of the range of what I would expect, are there humans in the loop that can catch these things, right? And so we have these sort of out of the box factors here, but also this can be customized to whatever it might be for your organization. So this you can think about in large, more mature organizations. We can think about this as being a gate that models must pass before they get put into production. So this is a key hurdle that folks face, and we're seeing a lot of customer satisfaction around having this capability as well.
Love it.
So I guess there's one more thing I'll show you here, Ravit, and then
yeah, for sure.
And then I'll close it down. I know we're geeking out here a little bit. We talked about. I know we talked about. When we talked about our gaps, one of the big gaps that we talked about was building trust in my model. Mm-hmm. And so we talked about how responsible AI will help with that. But that's just sort of one aspect of it. The other is, how can I get non-business users comfortable with the behavior of my model before, if you will, they put money into it? And by putting money, that might be an operational change. It might be actual money spent on, marketing budget, any number of different things, right? But for me as a leader, if I'm looking at someone brings me an AI model, I need to have some confidence, or actually a high level of confidence, that the money I'm about to put into it will have a return. So what we do in DiscoverYai is present those business level users with a kind of a business level interface, if you will, that helps them kind of play around with the model. So you can see here, for example, we have some dimensions that might affect my prediction. It gives the business leaders, the business stakeholders, the kind of the capability to go in and interact with the model, to do a gut check, if you will, to say, you know what, I've been doing commercial lending now for 20 years. I know that these 5 factors, will lead to a rejection or acceptance of a loan, etc. So this allows me to go in as a business user to say, to play around with the model and to kind of get that, at least that initial sort of confidence, if you will. Now, this doesn't replace clearly the exhaustive stuff, qualification that the data science teams do. This is really meant to, absolutely. So it's just meant to kind of give business users some level of confidence before they deploy it. So I think that's what I wanted to kind of show you, Ravit, and I hope this is helpful for the viewers rather, to kind of get an understanding of some of the capabilities and some of the things that we do to help clients close some of the gaps that we talked about earlier.
I love it. And I'm gonna bring you up here on screen, Ben. Let me do that. This was fantastic, Ben. Anything that you want to explain, or I can pull out the screen?
Since we've got this screen up here, we talked a little bit about use case prioritization too, right? So back to that chief data officer, right? And I think we spoke with a head of a data science at a VP of data science at a large bank here in the US. Actually, the bank is in Canada. And he said, my use case pipeline is over 300 use cases and growing. So he said, and he's managing it on a spreadsheet. And he has
That
a lot of
spreadsheet. Oh my God.
on a spreadsheet, right? And so each one of those is, each one of those use cases is at a different state of qualification. There's different thoroughness, if you will, and discipline around use case qualification. So imagine trying to manage all of that manually if you're a chief data officer within that organization. So what we give you also with DiscoverYai is you start to build out your use cases, your use case pipeline. You can see here that we also give you sort of an at-a-glance view of the different use cases that you're managing. And clearly we want to focus on high impact, low complexity. So it gives you a way to sort of manage that pipeline with also some rigidity around how those qualifications are made. So that's something else I think we see a lot of our successful customers deploying as well.
I love it, 100%. And Ben, first of all, thanks for sharing everything in detail and giving us an inside view of how it kind of looks like from obviously explore AI to responsible AI. And these are very important topics when it comes to obviously the data science leaders kind of working into the game, like you mentioned about this guy obviously having like 300 use case in that to just on the spreadsheet. It becomes like a challenge, but obviously DiscoverYai is kind of changing the game. I have one last question for you, Ben. I know we're almost time, but then I'm pretty sure the audience listening to us would love to catch up with you, would love to meet you, or learn from the content that you share. So if they want to reach out to you, which is the best place, and if they want to follow you, where can they do that?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. And yeah, that'd be great. I love to hear from folks. Always love to engage with folks and kind of learn. As we're building these products, right? Kind of learn, how applicable it is, what folks think about it. So yeah, please feel free to reach out. I encourage it.
Fantastic. So you guys know where to reach out to Ben, and feel free to reach out and ask questions. Ben is always, out there for the community, and obviously all the great insights that he has. It always brings a lot of interest in the community. So Ben, it has been such a pleasure, but also thanks for taking the time out and getting on the Ravit Show. Can't wait to host you again very soon, for sure.
Thank you, Ravit. It's been a pleasure, and hope you have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thanks everyone for joining us. See you next time.